Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast by the Tharika Foundation. I'm your host, Poonam here, and in this episode, we are exploring the quiet strength, emotional complexity, and personal growth that come with caring for aging parents from afar. A reality for many of us who are here in abroad and our parents are there in other countries. Long distance caregiving is an experience that blends deep love with tough logistical and emotional choices. Our guest today is someone who embodies resilience, empathy, and balance. They're caring for a parent abroad while managing life here, career, relationships, and their own well being. Let's dive into this important, rarely spoken about part of modern parenting and caregiving. Kannan, thank you so much for joining us today. To start, can you share a little bit about your family situation and how you came to care for your parents living abroad?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here, Poonam. You've been also my one of my support system, I would say. So thanks for all of that, and I appreciate this opportunity to share my experience with everybody who might be in a similar situation like I do. I live here in North Carolina, and I've been living in the United States for about close to 15 years, give or take. I live with my wife. She's also a working professional, and I have a 7-year-old son, or soon to be 7-year-old son. That's my little family here. But then my origins are from India. I was born and raised in Chennai, India, all my life until I moved here in the United States. And I also have a sibling who is an elder sister to me, and she lives in London. And my family is now, or at least the close circle has been now distributed across like 3 different continents. And my sister had moved abroad and she lives in UK. She's been there since 2007, something like that. But when I moved in, my parents were like, they were all okay. They were like taking care of themselves and all that. But then in the year 2022, late 2022 or mid 2022, I think that's when my mom started deteriorating. We noticed some changes in her behavior. And then in the early part of 2023, we figured out, I would say, sorry, early part of 2022, I take that back. 2022 is when we figured out that she's experiencing early stages of Alzheimer's. That's the most common form of dementia. Just to give you put things in perspective, I think my mom is around like 73, 74. My father is going to be 81 in about few days. Earlier on, like years back, I think to make it relevant to the topic that we're talking about, when I moved to the United States permanently with my family, I always had this thought or emotion you want to call or say that I wanted to care for my parents. But then this experience I was not expecting. I guess nobody can plan exactly on how this might situation might evolve and so on. It was despite having that intention that I would be responsible and taking care of them and all that. This thing going through that experience was completely different. It was challenging to accept it and then think about all the logistics to take care of them and all that. So when we started seeing the changes in my mom's behavior, so I traveled with my family. We stayed there for about 6 weeks in India. At that time, I mean, since 6 weeks is not a small period, I was also trying to work during the US. I was staying in Chennai. You would think that, hey, what's big deal? Like you could work in the night and then you can take rest in the morning, but it doesn't work like that because during my stay there for about 5, 6 weeks, I would have made 16 different hospital visits for my mother, like taking her to different doctors, consulting with them. I also made it a point that, hey, now that I'm doing all of these things, I cannot neglect my father as well because he's also into the mix of all of these things. He's also a caregiver too. So I was also caring for him. I was taking him to making him to do usual blood routine scans and this, then that, and all that, and make sure things are okay with him as well. And then at that point, it got to a stage where like my mom was no longer herself. She was not able to do things like cooking and things like that. She was not able to do really well and all that. My father was trying to manage it to the best of his ability. So we decided, okay, let's bring them here in the US, right? So we all traveled back and they were with us in the States until like November of 2023. So give or take about like 18 months or something around that. So during the time they were here, we were finding it very difficult, to be honest. Like my son was like about 6 years old, right? Or going to be 6 years old or something around that. And both of us were working, myself and my wife. Life changed a lot, right? Like for example, we would make something for my son's lunch and then we would send him off to school. And then me and my wife, like if we are at work, we used to get lunch at work or something like that. But then the completely changed. We started living with our parents because we wanted to cater to their needs. And my father he did his best as well. But once we started living here for like first 6 months or so, it's starting to weigh on us. Like I wasn't able to spend time with my son and my wife as much as I desired. And then my father was really getting bored here. Like he didn't have any of his social network here. He didn't like the weather and so on. So it was so contradicting. My father didn't like it here. He wanted to go back because he wanted to have his freedom. At the same time, my mother, she was like completely lost. She was like, one of the things that she enjoyed is like being around me and my wife and my son. She liked it in our presence. So it was a very difficult situation for me to decide, hey, I know my mother is now going to be all that really happy if she's going to go by herself and live in Chennai all by herself. But at the same time, my father would be really happy. I also had this doubt at that point in time if my father really appreciate all the challenges my mom is going to soon run into because it was I was trying to see, hey, can we a while some sort of an assisted living arrangement for them, and maybe in that way I don't have to worry too much because that's like they are in a very controlled environment, right? Where there's like nursing facility, doctors, housekeeping and food, all these things are already taken care for them, and there's someone who's going to be helping them along the way and all that. But my father was not ready for that for several reasons. I think one, looking back now, I think one thing that I've realized is my father wasn't trying to be financially a burden on us too, like myself and my sister. He was very particular about it, though he didn't speak, because my father is not someone who's like very outgoing, who it's very difficult to get anything out of him. So finding the right thing that would work for everybody in the family was like very, very stressful. I was very stressed out thinking about this again and again. Hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of them? I was shouldering all that and felt that I'm completely isolated and got to solve this humongous problem. I'll leave it at there, and I think as we talk this through, this is going to be we can talk more details as we move forward.
Wow, Kannan, you went through a lot as a family, and the way you were explaining that dilemma, whether you want to keep your mother happy or father happy, or you want to fulfill your own responsibility as a father, as a husband, And even being technology, that profession you are in, that's also not easy. So looks you finally made some decisions. So what inspired you to take on that responsibility, especially knowing how hard it can be with the distance? If I understand correctly, so your parents moved back to India and you are here in the United States. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So taking responsibility is something that I think it came to me very naturally because even when I was living in Chennai, I was the I've taken the lead on the family. So ever since I started working, I think about the time when I finished college, my father was already retired at that point. You soon become a breadwinner. So life revolved around me for my parents. And my mom is somebody who heavily relies on me for like emotional support and whatnot. Typically, some of the dynamics between my father and mother was always not the best, right? A lot of things that I've started shouldering even before I got married and whatnot. I always thought like it came to me so naturally, right? And plus, with me being an Indian, typical expectation is a son should be taking care of his parents and whatnot. I think with all that, I think with the way that I was brought up and all that, I think it didn't really. I never thought about it that being an alien part of thing where should I take responsibility or not. Leaving all this aside, right? I think when I look back, my parents have done a lot. They've done what they could do at their best for me, right? It may not be always right when you look back, but at that point in time, I think they have definitely done what they knew best, right? And all they wanted was, like most parents do, they want their kid to be successful in their own ways. I just want to be grateful for them. I think I wanted to show my gratitude. I want to make sure they shouldn't feel like they're lost, despite me and my sister being living abroad. I don't want this to make them feel like they have no support or anything of that sort. I think it came to me very naturally. Yeah, yeah.
You're absolutely right, Kanan. The country we belong to, that natural responsibility lies on the shoulder of the son, right? If they have son. But I wanted to ask you, do they have any help there in India? Like you were mentioning, your father was little reluctant or mother was little hesitant to get assisted living. So do they have any local support there?
Yeah, yeah. So while I was figuring out, like as we decided, so we didn't come to this conclusion very easily, obviously. So me and my wife, we literally talked about pros and cons of we all moving back to India. What does it mean for our professional lives, for myself and my wife? How would we even find a job and things like that? And what would be the experience for my son who just started going to school and things like that? And in a long run, like how is it going to help us or not help us? We were talking about all of these things. And then we concluded that we being the good thing that needs to happen is to take care of them and provide them the best help that we could offer. And then at the same time, we didn't want it to do something that they both didn't prefer, which is for me, my father clearly said that he's not going to take any, you didn't want it to move to an assisted living or anything of that. So I started exploring what my options are. What other options can I pursue? So I came across a couple of different services in India where they give you a care manager, for lack of better term. It's like an individual who lives somewhere closer to the vicinity of wherever your parents' house is. And then they do a lot of support in the sense like you can call that person to say, hey, I need a plumber or I need an electrician or something needs to be fixed, right? He would get the right service for you. So he would deal with the payments and things like that. And then so you get household stuff fixed if you want. Then you also, and the same person can accompany you to a doctor's visit if you have to. And then the same person can help you buying medicines if you wish. Or let's say if in some people's case, if they're not able to take the medicines regularly if they're struggling with their understanding their prescription and whatnot. This person would look at the prescription and put that in a prescription box, like the pill box, arrange it on days and time and so on, so that it becomes easy, right? So I went there and hired one of those servers. And the second thing I did was also, so this though this person is there and they're on standby to respond to any emergency and all that stuff, but you also need somebody to do like housekeeping, laundry, cooking, and all that stuff. And with my anticipation of my mom is going to continue to decline, she's going to be needing a lot more support as time passes by, which is happening. So we decided to hire somebody to stay with them full time, which is then we looked at different agencies, and then luckily one of my colleagues, she had to go through something very similar, if not exactly the same. They also happened to live in Chennai at that point in time. So she gave me a contact of somebody who can stay at home, cook food, that kind of a thing. So I contacted that person and I arranged for her to come home and stay with my parents so that she can take care of cooking, taking care of the kitchen, and then helping my mom serving food and that kind of thing. So between the person who is staying at home 24/7 and then this care manager, I think that practically covers a lot. I would also say this right now with my father still being active, right? So it's a lot of external stuff like going to a grocery shop or going and getting milk or vegetables and things like that. I think he still enjoys to do. So that's something that he didn't want to offer that service to somebody else. So that's something that he continues to do. And with all the needs of my mom, like taking medicines and things like that, it's still my father is assisting. So I think this kind of coverage or the needs of the services is going to vary from every family, and it's going to be unique to everybody's situation that they're dealing with. But at least in my case, at present, with all of these services that I talked about, I think I feel better that there is someone who's caring for them all the time, and despite me trying to reach them over the phone. Yeah.
I'm so glad, Kannan, you could find those services, and you're grateful for finding services, and your colleague was also helpful. But one question is coming to my mind. How do you stay connected and coordinate care with your parents? Is technology helping you, or something else you do to remain connected?
Yeah, great question. I think has made things so easier. It never gonna replace someone sitting right next to you, but then I think you can get as close as you can be. For example, I've set up a camera in my home in Chennai in the living room. I could watch them if they are like sitting in the living room and then watching TV or reading newspaper or having their food and whatnot. So I can keep an eye on them. And another thing is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is something I think it made connection so easy. I call them over the video call and talk to them and discuss them and whatnot. So what happens is as parents get older, especially my father, he was not someone who is very comfortable with technology at all. He was somebody who was neglecting technology constantly until my mom really became sick and she was not able to use the phone and all that. Like he wasn't somebody who was familiar with technology at all, but glad that he's at least able to answer calls and whatnot. But even now, sometimes my father wouldn't answer the phone. So what I do is it's a camera where I can also speak to them. They may not be able to see me, but then I can speak to them and I can hear them speak as well through the camera. So let's say my father didn't answer my call, then I would look at the camera, and if I see them awake, then I would say, Appa, I'm calling you. I'm going to call you. Can you look at the phone? And then we would start talking on WhatsApp and all that. I think that's certainly a big comfort. The same thing with my maid as well, like the person who stays at home. I stay in touch with her via WhatsApp and talk to her every now and then. The same thing with the care manager. So I text him on WhatsApp, keep up with him. And in India, depending on which services, which lab services that you go to, another thing that I think with technology it's become really helpful is that when they give a blood sample to a lab, and whenever the blood report and lab report is ready, it's going to shoot out an email to me. So I get to see all the lab results without having to ask anybody. We use a service called Metropolis, Lister Metropolis. That's a lab service. I think it's a chain. You would find many locations across India. It's been super convenient because my email is registered, right? So that kind of made things easier as well. I wish the other thing is if the banking can also be managed remotely, which unfortunately, because of we using a different phone number, living in a different country and all that, it becomes very complicated. So apart from that, I think for practical purposes, I think through these different methods, I think you got it covered.
Yeah, I'm so glad your parents are open to learning at this age and they're using technology. And as you were saying, even the maid in your house is also technology savvy. So even though we are remote, we can't be there physically, but we are still connected. We do care and we are providing them emotional support, whatever way, shape, and form we can. So do you visit them
Yeah,
physically also?
yeah. I made it a point to go there at least once a year or once in 8 months or something like that. So far, it's been around like 8 months, once or so. I go there, if not my entire family. I go there and then spend some time with them, be with them, get to know what's happening and so on. So it's an emotional journey. It's you're going to a completely different environment. Home used to be very different when everybody was well, right? Like my mom used to be like super joyous and she would cook and do this and that and all that. She would love to spend time when we go there and all that. But things now has changed, especially my first visit and before my mom got officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It was very stressful because like I was like trying to catch a breath, right? That still horrifies me a little bit because the experience that you have to deal with in India when you're going to a bigger hospital system and so on, it's not easy. So I do sometimes think about it and then wonder how is this going to be, but then I got to do that anyways. To be able to go see them and then spend some time with them is probably worth all of these things, is what I feel. Yeah.
As you mentioned, I'm sure there is emotional toll is there on you also when you are taking care of them, your job, your family over here. So how do you take care of yourself, Kannan?
I wasn't to start off with. Rewinding back to 2021-ish, remember, I think it was 2022 January, that's when I came to know like a couple of my relatives, they all called up and said, hey, this my mom is not right. She doesn't seem to be feeling all right. You might want to check on her and all that stuff. Like I was getting a little worked up, but then, I mean, we did all the things that I was just sharing with you, and they came back here before we moved them back in November 2023. About, I wouldn't say 4 or 5 months. That's the time where like we were trying to figure out what are we going to do, right? Because it was a time where I wasn't able to do justice to my wife or my son. And I would get up in the morning, I'll start making coffee for everybody at home, my parents. And then a little later, I might be making breakfast or something like that. My father used to cook us for all of us. And then even the food, the choice of food, like for my son, what he wanted to eat versus what my father and mother would prefer versus us, it all was different. So it wasn't easy. I guess my biggest struggle was one of the things that haunted me the most was like, okay, my father doesn't like it here, but my mother is happy here living in the US. But if I were to choose to move to India, then the tide would shift entirely. Like my mother is going to be even more depressed or unhappy, but my father is going to be very happy. And plus, on top of it, my father was not ready to go into any sort of organized care or assisted living kind of facility. So my question had become, how am I going to solve this dilemma? How am I going to take care of this? In my mind, it was like putting them or helping them situate in a assisted living facility was the easiest solution in India, because like one, they are in a controlled environment and whatnot. So that's really stressed me out, completely stressed me out. So much so that I still remember my way to the airport. To We drove from here, from North Carolina to Washington D.C. to catch a flight to India. That journey, I was feeling extremely thirsty. I had very dry mouth, and I was keep on drinking bottles and bottles of water, but still my mouth was extremely dry. I didn't recognize any of these symptoms, by the way. So after going to Chennai, stayed there for about a week or so, and I was going to travel for work or something like that. I was starting to notice that I was not sleeping well and was preoccupied. I thought it is jet lag, but then this dryness in the mouth was bothering me so much. And then I went to a doctor. The doctor looked at me and said, "You have all signs of all symptoms of depression." And that's when it really struck me that and they looked at my blood pressure, was like terrific, was like 160 by something. And that freaked me out a lot. Right after that, I think I also, while I was in India, I also had a one time where like I was going to hurt myself. That like really shocked me a lot. I didn't, and that's when the first time I realized the gravity of this thing, how much it weighed on me, because so all this time I was not taking care of myself. But then with all the episode that happened in India, after I started coming back, after me coming back home here in North Carolina, that's when I started to really prioritize myself. It wasn't still easy, so I started practicing yoga to get myself physically moving. That really did help. And then still I wasn't very happy. But then I also started talking to somebody. I was talking to a therapist. I was sharing everything that I was going through and whatnot. I think that tremendously helped. In this journey, I think when I look back again, it's a blessing in disguise, because it showed me that I wasn't completely prepared for life situations like this, and I was not taking care of myself. And really, like some common things that you would think it is so common, like such as self-compassion, that wasn't a part of me at all before this journey. My awareness of my emotional level and my physical body sensation and all that was also so low. I couldn't even recognize myself that I was going through acute anxiety or depression sort of symptoms. All this thing came out to light only because of me going through all of these experiences. So since then, after me coming back, I've started prioritizing myself. I've started listening to self-talk or self-compassion kind of audios and so on, or gratitude and all that stuff. And then I've also went through an Ayurvedic program in India. I stayed there in an Ayurvedic clinic for about 10 days to physically help me out and all that. Ever since that January of 2024, I'm still practicing yoga and meditation and all that. That's been tremendously helpful. I wouldn't stop it for the world.
Wow, Kannan, I feel this caregiving journey shaped your views on aging, family, and your own life priorities. Aging is a natural and a normal process, but we are not aware how much toll it can take when you take that caregiver role. But your story is so powerful and inspirational. Thank you for sharing your heart, your honesty, and your experience. Your story is a reminder that love has no borders and that caregiving, whether near or far, is one of the most human acts of all. But at the same time, I loved what you learned, that self compassion. To our listeners, if you are a caregiver, know that your role matters. You're not alone. And if you are not a caregiver, look around. You probably know someone who is. Reach out, listen, and support. This has been Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast by Tarika Foundation. Kannan, I again wanted to say thank you so much for spending time with us, sharing your journey with us. Be well and take care of yourself and those you love.
Thank you.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every month, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we thank you so much for listening.